Hi, welcome back to Digital Defense. I'm your host, Jordan Robertson, broadcasting to you live from Bloomberg News Washington, D.C. Bureau. This is our weekly cybersecurity show where we talk about the latest and greatest hacks as well as tips and tricks for securing your digital life. This week, I want to talk to you about a story that we broke this week for Bloomberg Business Week. As always, we encourage highly comments. This is an audience-driven show, so we're broadcasting to you live on Facebook, on Periscope, Bloomberg.com, and the terminal. So wherever you're watching, please feel free, if you have any questions, to leave them in the comment section, and we'll be watching those forums, and we'll try to take as many questions as we can. So I'm just going to jump right into it. This week, we broke via Bloomberg Business Week a story about Kaspersky Lab. Kaspersky Lab is a company many of you have heard of. This was the really fun graphic we had prepared for the story. Kaspersky Lab is a major antivirus security company. They are based in Moscow. They power antivirus engines that protect as many as 400 million people worldwide. That's not why we're talking about Kaspersky Lab, though. We're talking about the company because they have come under increased scrutiny from the U.S. government for the company's ties to the Russian government. And our story explored one aspect of that, which was the company's founder, Eugene Kaspersky. Despite years of denials that he has ever worked with or has any connections to the Russian government, Bloomberg Business Week was able to obtain a number of internal emails from 2009 showing a secret technology development partnership with the FSB, which is Russia's central intelligence agency. And again, this story is important, I think, for a couple of reasons. Not just because, as a corporation, this company is coming under increased scrutiny by the U.S. government, but also, as it relates to this show, I think there's some really important lessons we can all learn and discuss that I think it's important to discuss about what exactly is the risk of antivirus software. The subject may sound a little paradoxical. Isn't antivirus software supposed to protect you from hackers? It is. It depends who's doing the protecting, though. And that's the topic I want to dive into today. So if you have any questions about the security of your security software, that's the topic we're going to be talking about today here on Digital Defense. So let's just dive right in. One of the things that the story mentioned was that part of the problem with antivirus software is its own security depends on who controls it. So if you're a U.S.-based company, you are going to be subject to any U.S.-based investigations or laws or court decisions regarding how you administer that technology. And if the U.S. government wants access to your computer, if you are the target of an investigation, and they have a way in through your security software, which I should mention runs at a very privileged level on your computer. There are very few programs that run with as many privileges by design as your security software. That's a potential avenue for attack. And I should say, if the courts approved, a legitimate level of attack, many would say. So the problem that we run into when it comes to things like Kaspersky Lab, or conversely, U.S. tech companies, as we saw with the Edward Snowden revelations, if your home government, your home country government decides that it needs a backdoor in your technology to serve some sort of national security interest, government has ways of doing that, either overtly or covertly. And you as a company have very little recourse. I'm reminded of the case in which Yahoo, some previously sealed documents related to Yahoo's attempts to hold off the U.S. government's requests for data led to increasingly large fines against the company for every day and every week that they didn't comply. So there are severe penalties for not complying with your home country government's requests. And the point of the concerns about Kaspersky Lab is, I should say out the gate, we don't have any evidence Kaspersky Lab has done anything nefarious with its software, and none that we've seen, at least. The government may have, and likely has, apparently different information, but we have not seen that. That has not been made public. The issue here with Kaspersky Lab is the overarching concern that its antivirus software could be used in service of gathering information about U.S. citizens. And the way that's done is again, antivirus software or any other security software runs at a very privileged level on your computer. What does that mean? That means you've given it permission by design to scan your files and scan your computer for malware. You want it to do this. To do that, it has to have basic privileges that go beyond the normal app that you would download. If the garden variety app like Uber or something else asked you for the permissions that your security software needs, you would never click yes. But this is why we have this stuff. The problem becomes if that software is updated, and if it is updated maliciously, you'll never know that. So if the Russian government, hypothetically, were to go to Kaspersky Lab and say, we want you to update these people's computers in this very specific way that makes them compromised for attack. If the company is forced to do that, and again, let's not pretend we're all naive newbies here. After the Snowden revelations, it's very clear governments can make companies do things. And I'll say it again because this subject gets lost on a lot of people. Governments can make companies do essentially whatever they want, especially if they have a court order. So if this software were to be updated maliciously in the eyes of the victim, antivirus software, security software can gather essentially any information it wants on your computer. That's not to say that you should fear security software. There are legitimate reasons for this software to have these permissions. What I will say, however, and I get this question a lot, does that mean I shouldn't use security software? Absolutely not. And another question I get is, should I not use antivirus software? It's kind of a legacy technology. It will not catch the most advanced attacks. And my response, again, is absolutely not. Like, don't cut yourself off from these great security technologies that the industry has afforded us. If you're concerned about Russian spying, perhaps Kaspersky Lab is not the choice for you. However, if you're concerned about U.S. spying, perhaps U.S.-based companies' technology is not the choice for you as well. So we're getting some questions here. Thanks for those. Again, we welcome any and all questions. So any of them that you have, please feel free. If I have a Mac, should I still load an antivirus engine? It's an interesting question because Macs in general get infected less. And there are two reasons for that. One is they're less frequently targeted by hackers. The universe of Windows machines, and this is well known at this point, is just bigger, is bigger exponentially than the number of people who use Macs. So hackers tend to write their malware to target Windows machines. That being said, Apple computers also have certain security protections that Windows computers don't. But all that being said, I think we're in a new era at this point. It used to be pretty good advice. Apple itself gave this advice famously. Apple computers don't need security software. I think that advice it has been thrown out the window. I think it's very clear that Macs can get hit with attacks just like Windows computers can. So if there is a security software that you like and you feel will protect you better than the technology that comes pre-installed on these computers, then I'd say by all means, it does afford you a level of protection. But there's a huge caveat in any of these discussions, and I hope is one of the takeaways that anybody watching gets from some of these discussions, is that security software can only go so far. The way that attackers get inside networks, by and large, is phishing emails. They want you to click on something that tells your operating system, whether it's Mac or Windows or whatever, I give this program permission to run. That's what happens in a phishing scheme, is you click on a link, you're not just clicking a web link, you are clicking yes to a question of will you allow this program to run, and in a privileged state. It's game over regardless of whatever security software you have at that point. So yes, it's good to use security software. There are definite advantages to it. Kaspersky Lab, I should note, even though it's been the subject of some tough stories by us and others as well, the industry regards it very highly. It's actually a very, very good antivirus engine, and I've said this many times. And they have a world-class research team. So as an antivirus engine on its own, it's actually very good, and many others are good as well. So that's my advice on that subject. Next question here is, don't most new computers come with antivirus software pre-installed? The answer is yes. If you go buy a computer, especially from retail, chances are your computer's already going to come preloaded with some version of antivirus software. These are very lucrative deals for the security software industry. If they can get Dell or HP or Lenovo or any other large PC maker to embed their software at the point of purchase, that's really valuable, because what typically happens is this software will come pre-installed, you'll get some sort of limited license, whether it's 90 days or a year or whatever, and then after that the software is already on your computer, so it will prompt you to pay for the next upgrade. Again, on its own, it's not the worst thing in the world. However, if you are concerned about Russian spying, the U.S. government has made it pretty clear that they consider Kaspersky Lab potentially a national security threat. Again, no evidence it's been used for malicious purposes, but the Trump administration, in fact, has limited Kaspersky Labs, the availability of Kaspersky Lab to certain U.S. government agencies based on these concerns. So my advice is always kind of the same on this. You've got to figure out who you're concerned is going to be spying on you. In general, for most people, the biggest concern is ourselves. We click on things we shouldn't. We infect our computers when we didn't mean to. That's going to be the biggest concern for most people. So if you have a piece of security software that you like, again, Kaspersky Lab is actually a very good piece of software, then by all means use it. But just be aware that whenever you install one of these pieces of software, you do open a door to the potential that it could be used against you, which is, again, is an odd concept because security software is supposed to protect us, but it can also be a vector for attack. Getting some good questions here. Please feel free to keep them coming. Do other countries use the same antivirus software as the U.S.? Are we ahead or behind when it comes to this technology? The answer to this question is yes, there are regional differences. Kaspersky Lab, again, the topic of our discussion, they are very big in Russia. They are very big in the Middle East. They're big in Africa. They're big in Latin America as well. These are markets that some U.S. companies have struggled to penetrate. And conversely, technology that's widely used in the U.S., Symantec and McAfee and things like that, they're not as widely used overseas. China has its own flavor of security software as well. So yes, there are absolutely regional differences in these companies. And in fact, that's one of the reasons that companies like Kaspersky Lab, or some of these foreign to the U.S. companies, they produce some of the best research and most interesting research on cybersecurity threats because of who their clients are. They just see different attacks. For example, in the Ukraine is being hammered by Russian state-sponsored hackers. Security companies operating in the Ukraine get a much different view of the Russian threat than other companies might. And that's really valuable because when you learn about these threats, it's not just some esoteric purpose so you can publish research. That's certainly part of it. It's so you can improve your own defenses. It's really valuable. So these geographic differences do matter. And when it comes to are we ahead or behind in terms of technology, when it comes to antivirus engines, they're all pretty much the same. They have different, there are different features and functions and things like that. But in general, the industry, the baseline is kind of set already. There aren't massive differences between them, but there are some important distinctions. So I wouldn't say the U.S. is ahead or behind in that regard at all. However, the United States is the home base of the cybersecurity industry, and as the world's biggest economy, one of the key markets you'd want to sell into, whether you're selling to corporations or consumers. A data point I might want to add is that the U.S. and Western Europe are Kaspersky Labs' by far biggest markets. So this whole controversy that we've been writing about and that the Trump administration has continued to stoke with some of its latest allegations and actions poses a very significant threat to this company because Kaspersky Lab, 60% of its revenues come from the U.S. and Western Europe. Part of the reason for that is it may have a large market penetration in Russia, but it's a less rich country. So people are not going to be willing to pay as much for the software as they might in a Western country. Question here, what are email services doing to stop phishing emails? Well, they're doing a lot. I think this question relates to process. Like when I get an email, how do I know that Google or Yahoo or whomever or Outlook is protecting me from phishing? One of the ways they do that are called indicators of compromise. And what that means is anytime there's a large-scale attack, security companies and the internet providers and email providers, they all get together and share what are called indicators of compromise. So, a lot of times they'll do that through government bodies such as DHS, Homeland Security here in the U.S. And what they'll do is they'll share these indicators of compromise, and they will flag them anytime anybody sends an email from, let's say, servers or infected computers that are known to be sending malicious files or sending attack files. Those emails will be blocked. It's a good solution. It's an intermediate solution. Because what hackers do is they change their, it's called infrastructure, their attack infrastructure all the time. What that means is they change the computers that they're attacking people from. And what that means for internet providers and email providers is it's very hard to keep track of where these attackers are coming from. So when you see things like the Democratic hack of the U.S. 2016 election, that all started with phishing emails. And these were phishing emails that got through Google. These were phishing emails sent through Gmail. And I should say, Google has a very highly sophisticated anti-phishing operation. They have some of the best cybersecurity researchers in the world. It is not that Google is asleep at the switch on this particular issue. It's that the attackers move quickly. And you can't just block willy-nilly traffic that you suspect might be malicious, but you don't have any real factual basis for that. So that's the cat and mouse game that hackers play with these companies. So the short answer to your question is phishing emails will get through to your email accounts. And I should also say they will look really good. They will look very convincing. They will look like a letter from your boss. They will look like a message from HR. They will be absolutely convincing. My best advice on what to do to protect yourself against those kinds of phishing emails is not go out and buy a bunch of security software. It'll certainly help. But the biggest one is a lot of these attacks require two stages. They require you to click on a link, and as in the DNC hack in the 2016 presidential election, here in the US, they require you to enter your personal information on a second screen. I heard this advice a long time ago. It's like if you're ever kidnapped or if you're ever the target of a physical attack, fight like hell to not go to the second location. I think it was Oprah. Somebody like that. So, because that's where all the bad stuff happens. The exact same thing is true in cybersecurity. It's not so much the first bad thing that happens that is the bad thing. It's the second thing. So if you click a link and it prompts you for your credentials, your username and password, think of that example. Think of that example of it's the second phase that's really going to do you harm, and don't enter your credentials. That's the best advice I can give on that, because that's where the bad stuff happens. Next question here is, let's say my antivirus software is hacked. What do I do now? Well, the thing about this question is the type of hacks, quote unquote, that I'm talking about involve nation-state actors. So this would be the Russian government going to Kaspersky Lab with a court order saying, you will do this for us, you will help us hack these computers. They won't be allowed to talk about it. In fact, they'll be thrown in jail if they talk about it. The same has been true in the United States for companies that cooperate on these national security letters. There are steep fines, there's potential jail time, all kinds of bad things can happen. So what I'm talking about is if your antivirus provider is hacked, you'll never know that. You'll never know that at all. So there's really not a whole lot you can do in terms of protecting yourself from an antivirus attack. However, there is a piece of advice that I give all the time that I think is relevant to this question. And it's kind of a hack or a trick that I think is really useful. A long time ago, a cybersecurity professional told me a really good way to protect your computer is to run it in two modes. You have the administrator mode, which gives any software that enters your computer access to do bad things. This person told me, set up a guest account. And again, this advice I give all the time. Set up a guest account and use that for all your sensitive stuff. Because even if you get infected, it's going to be a lot harder for the attacker to install their malicious software and keep it there. Even if they manage to install a cutting-edge, high-level software, chances are it's going to disappear when you reboot. So that's just a piece of advice I like to give. There's not a whole lot you can do. If you suspect your antivirus software is hacked, that probably just means your computer is hacked. And the advice there is to wipe the hard drive, wipe the operating system, and just reinstall it and start over. Does the same advice go for firewall software? Can that be hacked too? Basically, anything can be hacked. I mean, I think you could swap in any technology into this question and say, could a firewall be hacked? Of course, a firewall could be hacked. Some easier than others. Could your antivirus be hacked? Sure. It could be a vector for attack. Some easier than others. The bigger question we're getting at here is who makes that technology? Is it U.S. made? Or is it Russian made? If it's Russian made, and you're concerned about potential Russian spying, that's something you should just be aware of. And I hope that that's something you take from the show, which is it matters a lot who makes your technology. Not because they're inherently bad, not because they inherently want to spy on some other country, but because any company doing business anywhere in the world, I don't care what country you're in, you're going to have to comply with the laws of your home country. And that's the big message. And that's not necessarily an anti-Russia thing. That's just a general business practice thing. Next question here is, can you tell us specifically what are the exact threats or hidden risks? Sure, this is a question I like a lot because as reporters, one thing that readers may not know is that we have to go so much deeper on some of these subjects than we can ever put into a story. So for a story like our Kaspersky Lab one, whose image I showed you earlier, we had to learn a whole lot about, my colleague Mike Riley and I had to learn a whole lot about what exactly is it that an antivirus engine could get the Russian government if they decided to abuse this channel into your computers? And the answer is a whole lot. The threat is this. The threat is not that somebody would sit over your shoulder monitoring you all the time as a hacker. The threat is that your security software could be used to scrape information about your computer and identify some really important things. It can identify where vulnerabilities exist on your computer. It can prevent those vulnerabilities from being fixed. So that's kind of the key thing, is for security software to work, it has to know where the vulnerabilities are on your computer and then how to fix them. Well, you think about it, for an attacker, that's a pretty great capability, because what you can do is tell that software, don't fix that vulnerability, and then I'm going to send my exploit right through that takes advantage of that known vulnerability on your computer. It's a very powerful capability. So that's the big risk. We're talking about kind of Trojan horse technologies here. Any technology that's allowed to do things at a highly privileged level on your computer is a potential risk. Antivirus happens to fall into one of these categories that just kind of enables these pretty perfect attacks if they're abused. So with that, we've run out of time here. I really want to thank everybody for commenting. We really love the engagement. We also like to continue it offline as well, to the extent we're able. So if you want to write to me, I'm on Twitter. It's at JordanR1000, Jordan, the letter R1000. And you can tweet to us on Bloomberg Technology as well. That's the Twitter handle, @technology. We welcome all questions offline and are happy to respond to as many as we can. So with that, we're going to wrap for the week. Thank you all for watching. We broadcast every week at 12 noon Eastern Time here in Washington, D.C. If you want to check out our webpage, it's bloomberg.com/technology. We've got links to these shows as well as those by a colleague named Mark Gurman called Gadgets with Gurman. We also have links to a great podcast we do called Decrypted. And in fact, this week we do have a great new podcast on this exact topic where we play some never-before-heard audio from Eugene Kaspersky discussing some of these ties to the Russian government. So please feel free, go check it out, let us know what you think. And with that, we'll wrap, and thanks again for watching Digital Defense. We'll see you next week.